do you believe that the Earth is sentient? Now, if you believe that the Earth is sentient, could it be that the other planets are sentient too? And the other thing is at that moment of time that we are born, that the energy is very unique. And that is encoded in every cell of our body, which is why we have a physical reaction to the transits. Like you'll actually, when you go through Pluto transits or any of the other transits, you will notice, if you're aware and you start to observe what's happening in your body, you will notice your body's feeling the energy of that transit. As you work with it, you will feel a change in your physical body as well. Like, that's when I started to listen to my body very acutely and see what is my body needing at that time. And so many things changed. My body needed different things. So it has a physical impact on you. And that you can observe that when you're open to it and you're consciously working with, you'll actually start to observe all these things. Like it's affecting your mind, your emotions, your body, all of it.
You're listening to Empower Her, the podcast curated for busy women aged 35 and beyond. If you're feeling stuck and unfulfilled in your health, wealth, or well-being, then get ready to be empowered to take action so that you can start achieving anything within a set time frame that works for your lifestyle. I'm your host, Shreya Parekh, and together with my guests, we'll be providing knowledge, resources, and ideas to help you broaden your perspectives, learn more about yourself, and define your path to live your absolute best life. Be sure to hit that follow button to stay tuned with the podcast, and don't miss out on valuable free resources available on the website to support your journey. The midlife crisis, midlife transition, or midlife awakening, whatever you call it, it's a big deal. How do you know if you're in it? Well, I'll be talking with Swati Kameswar, a visionary coach known for brilliantly blending astrology with transformational coaching techniques. She connects you to your authentic voice and your unique hidden skills and gifts through Natal Chart Embodiment, an out-of-the-box process crafted by her that combines the hidden clues in your astrology chart with intentional creativity in a fun and playful way. This is not about predicting your future. This is about empowering you with information, giving you the best outcome from astrology and highlighting the huge importance of emotional clearing. Get ready for a super insightful and revealing conversation. Swati, welcome to the Empower Her podcast. It's great to have you on. I am super excited to have this conversation with you. It's something that I have been really interested in from when I was a child, actually, and I always follow as much as I can, and I always have actually followed from a very young age. Could you please introduce yourself and explain a little bit about your journey from what you were doing before to what you're doing now? That would be great. Thank you so much.
Hi Shreya, thank you for having me. It's a delight. I'm Swati Kameswar. I'm a visionary coach helping women in their 30s, 40s, and 50s who are awakening during midlife to transform midlife crisis into midlife awakening through the power of activating their authentic voice and their unique skills. So I was an engineer for 20 years, spent about 2 decades in the world of engineering and management, and I found my own calling during midlife to help others express their genius through their voice. And my skill set now includes astrology, intentional creativity, sound healing, and I'm passionate about helping people to see how the midlife timeframe, or what is commonly known as midlife crisis, can really be a catalyst for deep personal transformation, getting into alignment with our soul's intent, and setting up the second half of our life for authentic, meaningful, and joyful success.
That's brilliant. So can you start off by explaining what astrology is? I mean, a lot of people have heard the term astrology, and we kind of assume, it's horoscopes, but I know there's a lot more to it than just your horoscopes. Could you talk a bit about that and just explain what it is you do with astrology and what that actually means?
Yeah. So astrology, in my perspective, is the study of the celestial bodies in our solar system and even beyond, and their effect on our consciousness. So that's the way I look at it. And when you generate a a natal chart. You need your date of birth and time and place of birth to generate that chart. And what that chart represents is the position of the planets at the moment that you were born. So the position of the planets at the moment that you're born, all of that, all the different planets, their significance, the energy that they carry, they all represent an energy that holds, in my perspective and experience, tremendous clues to who you have been and who you're meant to become, and the tools that you have at your disposal in this life. So it can be, it really encapsulates your soul's intent. And if you can read it and understand it, it can be a powerful tool for personal development. And there are two aspects to the chart that I feel are important to call out, because it's not just the horoscopes. Often the horoscopes are based on the sun sign, and the sun is only one tiny part of what makes up your personality and what makes up your personal energy. So it's a very important part. But there are so many different planets that, the Mercury represents the mind, Venus and Mars represent our the feminine and masculine aspects within us, and there's so much meaning to all of these. So there are two aspects to the chart that I work with. The first is the static aspect, which is basically the position of the planets when you were born. So that will give you clues to past life lessons, the places where you sabotage yourself, the gifts that you have from past lives. So that means when I say past life, it's really like it's inherent and innate within you. You have access to it. It may not be expressing. And a lot of these static aspects that the soul is learning how to work with. So we may be expressing those energies in a negative way, and that's where the soul's growth comes from. The second aspect is a dynamic aspect, which is when you bring in transits. That means if the position of a planet in the sky today matches a position of planet in your natal chart, then it's activating, that's called a transit, and it's activating that energy within you. And so that is when we experience transits as a change showing up in our life, or a desire to do something different, or a desire for change. Or sometimes the change happens without our conscious we didn't initiate the change, it just happened to us, and now we have to deal with it. So they kind of act, those transits can act as turning points in your life. So that's there's a static aspect and a dynamic aspect, and I work with both of them with clients to help them to uncover their unique gifts and uncover their unique skills, because so much we have so much potential, and that potential gets activated during the transits, and the transits can often bring up emotional discomfort, and that transforming that emotional discomfort is how the soul grows and starts to activate latent aspects of the self. And actually that's how astrology awakened within me during the midlife planetary transits. I was doing my engineering job and I was feeling disillusioned. I didn't know what I was looking for. It was more like I was looking for authentic expression, my unique expression, but I had no idea what that meant.
Yeah.
And then I learned I was going through these midlife planetary transits. I learned that this is a really important time of my life to set up the second half of my life intentionally. And so I worked with them, and through that process, I came to, the interest in astrology awakened, and it just grew and grew. So that's what I mean by, these timings can be instrumental in awakening latent hidden gifts.
So when you do the readings and look at, your name, your place of birth, your time of birth and things like that, and you produce information based on that, is that information something that will carry you through the rest of your lifetime, or is that for just that year? How does that work?
Yeah, so like I said, there's a static and the dynamic aspect, and the static aspect carries throughout your lifetime. So it's a constant process of unfurling. So for example, I'll give you an example. I have my sun sign in the sign of Aquarius, and I also have rising in Aquarius. That means Aquarius is a very important energy for me to embody. Now, we can look at the meaning of Aquarius and the significance of it. And it is somebody who is, Aquarius energy is very unconventional. It is radically different from consensus reality. So that means if I'm carrying that energy, I am meant to be expressing in that way. But that is a new energy for me. And it takes time for me, for the personality, to learn how to be unconventional, not to get scared in standing out, how to have the courage to express your unique views, how to even tap into what is unique to you, kind of, um, uh, if you clear away all the layers and layers of stuff that we have built up because we have picked up stuff throughout our lifetimes, things that are not authentic to us, how to clear that away and let your own authenticity shine through and have the courage to shine through. That is a process that you can spend your lifetime learning and growing into. And so that static aspect is something that can always guide you, like you always keep reaching. And this is my way of working with the astrology, that I'm always reaching for the highest essence of that energy. Like I want to embody more and more the highest essence of that energy. And the shadow, what I call the shadow, or the negative way that energy can show up. Just we can take Aquarius itself. Aquarius, if an Aquarian is very in touch with their unique qualities and they are disillusioned by what they see outside because it's so different from what they see outside, they can end up being a rebel, and they can and oftentimes Aquarius energy can show up that way. But if you that can end up expressing in a destructive way, or you may just not have the courage to stand out and to let your uniqueness be expressed because we may be afraid of not fitting in. We may be afraid of what other people might think of us, of people rejecting our unique views, and so on. It's an endless kind of endless range where you can fall into. And so the static aspect will help you to understand, what am I moving towards? What is the soul moving towards? And so that can help you, help guide you throughout your life. The dynamic aspect, which is the transit, it depends on how long the transit lasts. So for example, if it is transits related to personal planets like Mercury, Venus, and Mars, those tend to move pretty quickly around the sun compared to the outer planets, say like Pluto or Neptune or Uranus. Those transits are much longer. And planets also go through retrograde motion, apparent retrograde motion. Like, what that means is that from our perspective on Earth, it looks like they're going backwards. Of course, that's not happening in real time. It is just from our perspective, it looks like that. But that means it will go over a part of your chart, or it'll go over a degree. It'll take much longer to go over that degree. That means for a Pluto transit, you could easily be experiencing that for a year and a half, 2 years. And if you have multiple planets together where Pluto is, say, traversing that, it could easily be 4 or 5 years. I mean, I myself went through the whole range of Pluto. Was the intensity of it was like 4 to 6 years. And that's when my transformation happened, right? From my career transition happened during that time.
Yeah.
So these transits, it depends on whether it depends on their timing, how long it is. So if you get a reading, it doesn't necessarily last for a year, but I do try to give you information about long-term transits and how to handle it, because with the transits, it is not the exact date that matters as much, especially for outer planets, like the ones that take a long time. Even Jupiter takes a year. It's not the exact date, but it's the months leading up to it where you are feeling that energy awakening in you, because this energy resides in it's encoded in our DNA, the energy of the moment that we are born. So when a planet is activating our chart, we actually feel it physically in our body. So you'll feel that in the months leading up to that transit. And so that is when the learning happens. And that's when we want to actually be aware of how will this energy show up? What should I do? What are the kind of practices I should have to get the most out of it, to receive the gift from it?
Yeah. So
yeah,
I guess there's a clear difference between the horoscopes that most people have access to. A lot of people have access to. You can just Google like whatever star sign you are, right? I am an Aquarius too, and you can just Google what is my star sign for. What is my horoscope for today, and read, and then take what take or leave what you want from that. I just wanted to I don't want to play devil's advocate, but I wanted to ask you, for some, astrology is that kind of woo-woo thing that people, think, oh, well, that's like, palm reading, it kind of falls under that bracket, and people look at astrology, some people do, and think, that's just a load of rubbish or whatever. And it's true, some people do. I definitely don't, because I've always been into it, and I don't know why I've always been into it, but I have. How can you kind of explain it in a way, because you also have religion on one side, okay, and then it kind of mixes, and people think, well, I don't believe in astrology because my religion is this. I mean, what's the difference? Is there an issue of being a certain religion and following astrology, and vice versa? Because to me, astrology is just about the facts of life in terms of, we have planets, that's a fact. That's not, it's not, that is a fact. And the way they move is a fact, and things like that.
Right. So I love this question, and I'm so glad you brought it up, because I'll tell you honestly, I didn't plan to become an astrologer. That was not my plan at all.
Especially from an engineering background,
Yes, I didn't wake up one day and say, okay, I'm going to learn astrology. And, it literally just dropped into my lap during, it just awakened in me during that midlife rate. I was around 37 at the time. So I'll share with you, I was born in India. And in India, Vedic astrology is a big deal. That's the kind of astrology practice there. And it's very popular. And I felt like my perspective there when I was growing up was that, okay, there probably is some validity to it, but I don't see it right now. And I really want nothing to do with it, because I'm not going to go to someone and then they tell me, oh, for the next 2 years of your life, you're going to be suffering, and you wear this and you wear that and you do this and you do that, and then you'll be fine. I somehow just did not resonate with that at all. And yet I became an astrologer, right? So what happened to change that? So what happened was, when this was back in, are you okay if I share a story of a particular date? So this was back in 2015, March of 2015. And we had just come back from a family vacation. The vacation had been beautiful. And the date was 20th of March 2015. It was a so basically 20th March is the equinox, when sun enters the sign of Aries, so 0 Aries. And it also happened to be a solar eclipse that day. Now, I didn't know any of this stuff. I'm just kind of setting the story up because it has relevance. There was a solar eclipse that day, and the degree of that eclipse was very close to my natal Venus. Now, I didn't know any of this, but I was feeling so sad and disillusioned on that day. I literally fell down on my knees and I said to the universe, to the divine, I have everything I wanted. Why is it I feel so sad? Like that was, I think, one of my lowest points in my life. And I had this moment of surrender, like where, the ego falls away, everything I think I know, all the intellect and all the pride, all of that just falls away. And you realize, you know what? I don't know anything. Help me, right? We reached that point of surrender. And that was such a key moment because it happened during that time of the eclipse, which was activating my natal chart. Now, I didn't know any of this at that time, but life started to change after that because a lot of things came into my awareness, which then led me to astrology, which then led me to my transformation and a whole bunch of things. Like, I went down a completely different path while I was still doing my engineering job. But that is what jump-started my transformation. Now, I went back. So I started to study astrology then. And I went back and looked at that date and I was like, oh my goodness. First of all, I was starting to learn about eclipses and how important. So I was starting to learn about transits and how the transits awaken things in us. And our choice, our free will choice at that time makes a big difference to how we experience things. That's what I learned. So what I learned there was that there is personal responsibility in all of this. If I go to an astrologer and I get a reading and they're telling me do this, do this, do this, and I'm just blindly following that, where is the personal responsibility? Right? And then I learned that I was undergoing what is called a Pluto transit. And Pluto will bring up anytime someone, Pluto transits, I feel if somebody is going through that, they really should know about it, because it's going to bring up everything that the soul has suppressed over lifetimes.
Wow.
Everything that you have not, what they call as karmic patterns. And then I learned that what karma is, it's really unresolved mental, emotional, and physical patterns that are not resonating with 100% love. So if we are not being, if you're not thinking, feeling, we don't have actions that are sourced in love, then we are going to be learning those lessons again and again. And that is what karma is. So it's not as if, I did something bad, now I'm coming back to suffer for it. The suffering happens because there is an emotional component to be dealt with. If I did some, if I have anger within me and something is triggering that, I'm going to feel the discomfort of the anger. And so Pluto transits will bring up all that emotional discomfort to be faced. And if I don't take the personal responsibility to recognize, what is triggering me? Why am I reacting in this way? What can I do to diffuse a reaction? What can I do to move beyond this pattern? We get stuck in those loops. Yeah. So I started to study astrology from this perspective, and that made so much sense to me that, okay, there is that personal responsibility piece. That is where the free will comes in, right? And the free will choice is what makes the difference. Now, two people could be going through the same Pluto transit, but if someone is stuck in a victim mentality mode and they are like, look at all this stuff happening to me, life is miserable, blah, 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 and they don't do anything to change it. Whereas someone else who recognizes that, hey, I'm stuck in a pattern. Could I be doing something that is making me stuck in that pattern? What is my piece in this? And can I take responsibility for it more? Those two people will have completely different experiences of it. And that's what I learned. And then the other thing I learned is that all these transits will bring up the discomfort in the form of it'll bring up emotional discomfort. That is why it feels so challenging. Yeah. And that's why we human nature is we don't want to deal with it. If it's challenging, if it's emotional discomfort, we want to just suppress it. So that made a lot of sense to me. And then I saw at different points in my life when my chart was being activated, the energy, that there was something going on, and then I reacted in a certain way. And so I started to study it from that perspective that, okay, today, this is what's going on. This is what's activating in my chart. This situation is showing up in my life. I'm responding in this way. It is uncomfortable as hell. What can I do to fix this? So that is how I learned. From that point on, that was my approach to astrology. It kind of became like a lab. I was just observing everything and then seeing, okay, what do I need to do so that I can become completely neutral to this? So hopefully that answered your question. Yeah. So it has nothing to do with religion, really. Yeah. Nothing to do with religion. You can be when people come to me for readings, they're from all sorts of backgrounds. They're from all sorts of backgrounds, and it's simply, the way I look at it is that, like you said, it's a fact. We have planets. Do you believe that the Earth is sentient? Now, if you believe that the Earth is sentient, could it be that the other planets are sentient too? Right? And the other thing is at that moment of time that we are born, that the energy is very unique. And that is encoded in every cell of our body, which is why we have a physical reaction to the transits. You'll actually, when you go through Pluto transits or any of the other transits, you will notice, if you're aware and you start to observe what's happening in your body, you will notice your body's feeling the energy of that transit. Yeah. And as you work with it, you will feel a change in your physical body as well. That's when I started to listen to my body very acutely and see what is my body needing at that time. And so many things changed. What I used to like eating, that dropped away. New things, new interests came up, my body needed different things. So it has a physical impact on you. And that you can observe that when you are, when you're open to it and you're consciously working with, you'll actually start to observe all these things. It's affecting your mind, your emotions, your body, all of it. Yeah, I suppose, you're right. When things are happening to you that are negative and that aren't good, it's very easy to get into that victim mentality and start thinking, oh, this always happens to me. Why is this happening? And, and going down that rabbit hole.
And it just takes a moment to step back and ask the question, why am I feeling like this? What is going on? And these questions to break free from that and then start to do something about it, really.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Yes. And, when we say something like this always happens to me, that's immediately a clue that, okay, I'm stuck in a loop. If it always happens to me and I don't want it to happen to me, then that means I'm stuck in a loop. And so what can I do to break that loop? And that's the free will choice, right? Like you're choosing to handle it in a different way.
Yeah. And then it's about exploring what you can do, the different things you can do to break that loop, whatever that loop is. Yeah. So, we've been talking a little bit about midlife crisis and things like that.
Yes.
What's your definition of midlife?
So of course, this is my perspective. So it's basically midlife. I look at it from anywhere between mid-30s to mid-50s.
Yeah.
And during that time, we go through, now we are going through transits all the time, right? And based on when a person is born, they could have a unique transit happening. But typically, we tend to have a lot of transits in that late 30s to late 40s period, where we are experiencing transits of Pluto, Neptune. We have the Pluto square, the Neptune square, the Uranus opposition, the Saturn opposition, then the Chiron return at around 49 to 50. So there's a whole bunch of things happening in quick succession that bring up just awareness of where we may not be aligned. And that often comes in the form of disillusionment or just wanting to search for more, like you're wanting more from life, or you're wanting to be more authentic. There's a deep desire during that midlife time to express authentically. And what has been, like the facade that we built up, that starts to feel very heavy.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I guess it's hard because you have to be at a point where you feel something different and you acknowledge that, because you can go through life feeling different things, whatever those negative and whatever those feelings are. But if you don't acknowledge those feelings and acknowledge the fact that, you know what, I'm feeling rubbish or like crap today, or I'm feeling like this, this whole year I've been feeling like this and I don't know what's going on. If you just go through life not acknowledging that, I mean, what are the consequences of that, to be honest?
Yeah, the consequences are that we often take it for granted that life has struggles. And of course, we will each have our own lessons to learn. But ultimately, we all want to feel the joy, right? And what I found is that during that midlife time, particularly when you're experiencing Pluto, Chiron transits, anything that is in the way of joy, which is basically heavy emotions, that's going to come up to be faced. And the consequences of not paying attention to that is that life starts to get heavier and heavier, or you just start to lose aliveness. And I see this with so many people, like they're just, walking through the motions. It's just like life is on autopilot, but there is no true passion, and there's no sense of aliveness, lightheartedness, no access to joy, or even if you feel joy, it doesn't last long. So that's the downside of not acknowledging what you're feeling and not actually exploring a path to move through it.
Does this link in with, because the age range you've mentioned, I feel like it kind of links into the kind of perimenopause, menopause time period for a lot of women. And I know from speaking to some menopause experts that Asian women, Black women, some other women of different ethnic minorities experience perimenopausal symptoms and the menopause a lot earlier than white women do. So is there a link between this kind of midlife stuff that's going on and
That's a good question, and I'm not an expert on that. So I can't say if there's a link because I look at purely things from the astrological perspective. And I will say one thing though. When we so from just from the astrology perspective, if you're going through Pluto or Chiron transits, it's going to bring up emotional stuff. And my own journey included the practice of emotional clearing, particularly through the practice of tapping, emotional freedom technique. I did that heavily, and I found it made a magnificent difference. Like it really helps to clear the emotions beautifully. So that was important. But when you're going through Pluto Chiron transits, it's going to bring to your awareness all the negative emotions that you've suppressed: anger, sadness, guilt, judgment, all of that. The second thing is that in your natal chart, if you have a lot of planets in the water signs, it means that you may have the water signs represent emotion. That means learning how to master the response to emotions is one of the soul's intent, which is why the soul chose that path. So, for example, I have Venus in the sign of Pisces, and that's a water sign. And so my way of, when I first got into this, like when I became aware of, oh, I'm going through Pluto transits and, all sorts of unresolved emotions will come up, I recognized that, wow, I feel sad all the time. Like, there's this low level sadness that I'm feeling all the time. And that was surprising because, I've been blessed to have a happy childhood, a wonderful family. Everything seems okay on the surface. So why do I feel sad, right? And that's when I realized that, okay, because I have Venus in Pisces, Pisces being a water sign, all the water signs, they tend to be very empathic. That means you will pick up emotions of other people as well. And not only your own. So if you're not doing a practice like regular emotional clearing on a regular basis, those emotions are going to build up. And then I'm going to, the default emotional state is sadness. And then even if I feel joy, there is no place for the joy to sink in because there's sadness. So doing that emotional clearing is really important. And I find that, and even now, there's so much research that shows unresolved emotions are what are the root cause, or they contribute greatly to physical symptoms. So I'm sure that there's a link to answer your question. I'm not an expert on that though, but I do see that when somebody has a lot of water planets or even a single one, but if they're not having the practice of emotional clearing, it can show up physically.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking more kind of the feelings side of things, not the physical symptoms of perimenopause. Obviously that's different. I mean more of the kind of feelings side of things that you're talking about, feeling sad, joy, different emotions. And it just feels like, I mean, I've just made that link thinking that, hold on a minute, it feels like it's around the same time as perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah, and it does, right? Like, because we go through the Chiron return around that time, late 40s to early 50s, and that's a significant transit in every life because that is a position. Chiron refers to the main wound that we are carrying, the main unresolved wound that we're carrying into this lifetime. So it may show up as a feeling of fragmentation. We feel not good enough. We don't feel adequate. Low self-worth, all of that. And honestly, that happens to most people. From the degree will vary based on how much inner work you've done. But most people face that unless they become aware of it and they start to clear it. And that Chiron return time will highlight the places where we still feel that. So that will obviously show up in the form of emotional triggers.
But then, obviously this kind of midlife time period, it happens to men as well. It's not just women. So,
it's not, absolutely. It happens to
everyone. It's not, men obviously do not go through perimenopause and menopause. So it was just me making that link anyway. But so how do you think astrology can help work through the midlife transitions, basically? Because it feels like it can give you so much information about you as a person and explain what's going on, so it can really empower you to make the choices and the decisions that you want to make, to make the changes.
Yeah. So going back to that static and dynamic aspects, both of those aspects give you so much clarity about what is it that you've come here to do. And the static aspects, for example, the tools that you have, the Mercury, Venus, Mars, that shows you how you express and how you go about life, doing things, achieving things in life. And when you can understand that each of these signs, whichever signs the planets are in, the personality will either express the negative aspect or the positive aspect or something in between. And the more you're aware of what is the positive aspect that represents this sign and how can I move more towards that, that itself gives you, it kind of opens up the potential within you. Because if you are, like I talked about the Aquarius sun, if you are someone who has unique views and you're not afraid of showing a different way of things, that those are the revolutionary types, right? Like they show a different way of doing things. For example, even so every sign has its own superpowers. And that's part of working with astrology consciously, is that you get to know what your superpowers are. You get to know what is the shadow aspect, and then you bring in the choice that, okay, I would like to develop this superpower within me. So every sign has that positive aspect that we can always move towards more and more. The second thing is the timing. Like, I was so grateful that I knew I was going through a Pluto transit. Like, if I had not had that awareness, if I didn't know that, okay, Pluto transit means it's going to bring up all the unresolved emotional stuff, and me pushing it away or ignoring it or denying it is not going to help me. So I went full in with that awareness. I went full into the emotional clearing process. And frankly, I did a lot of emotional clearing for a couple of years. And it was totally worth it, because that is how I learned later on that, okay, our karma is tied to unresolved emotions. So when you are clearing those unresolved emotions, you're clearing the karma. Now, the other thing that I learned, which is so significant, is that when you clear dense, heavy emotions, your DNA is affected. And your DNA holds a record of everything that you've been, that you are, and all the possibilities ahead of you. So when you clear the denseness and the dense, heavy emotions from within your body, then you get access to higher possibilities. And that is how your gifts come up. Like, so, the timing of these midlife transits is so important, because first of all, it will bring up discomfort. Now, if you take the personal responsibility and work with that and you start to transform that, then the higher possibilities show up. And that is when your new gifts come in. And that's how astrology, honestly, that's how astrology came in. Like, it started off as an interest in wanting to work with Pluto consciously, and then Chiron. Now, each of these transits, each of these planets, they have a certain energy associated with it. So Chiron, we talked about Chiron as a wound, but when you transform the wound, it becomes the teaching that you give others. It becomes a medicine that you give to other people who have the same wound. And that's a gift, right? Like when you transform a pattern within you and you know how to transform that, you have that medicine. Now you're offering that to other people to transform their wound. And that's so powerful. And that's how yeah, exactly. There are so many possibilities, and all these higher possibilities open up.
Yeah. And there's so many, it just makes me think now, actually, there's so many people out there that have transformed themselves, but, they've got this, they've obviously, what was that expression you said? They've cleared their wound.
They've cleared their wound.
They've cleared their wound and used that to help others. And there's so many people out there, like, famous people out there doing amazing things to help people move forward in their life, in different aspects of their life. And I wonder whether they used astrology.
Well, astrology is one tool, right? Like you can, it is one perspective, and it is something that clearly was a latent skill within me. Otherwise, I would not have been interested in it. And when I started to become interested in it, the remembrance came in quickly. Like I started to be able to read charts, and then I was doing it for friends, and then it was almost as if it was a cellular remembrance that came through. So that was unique for me, but for somebody else, it might be some other way or some other tool. There are infinite ways of transforming yourself. And,
of course.
Right.
Yeah.
Like in your work itself, you speak to people who are using all sorts of different tools and backgrounds.
Exactly.
The reason I like astrology is that it tells me about the timing. And I feel, and that was such an instrumental part of my journey, right? Like recognizing that, oh, this timing is important. I better pay attention to it.
Yeah.
Because the degrees of some of the big transits that happened, it matched my chart. And so that's what made me pay attention. So I was, and that's how partly my intuition works. It's very drawn to numbers.
Yeah.
So the degrees, the numbers, and these cosmic patterns, I'm very interested in that.
Yeah.
So you can find the tool that resonates with you. And for sure that will help you in your journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You talk about emotional clearing. I just want to quickly touch upon, like very quickly, can you give some examples of that? Because when you say I used some tools for emotional clearing, I did some emotional clearing. What does that mean? And what did you do to do that?
Yeah, and I'll just say that this was one of the most important work I have done. It's been some of the most hardest, but also the most important and so worth it. By emotional clearing, I mean that you clear any unresolved emotions within you. And unresolved emotions, by that I mean that anything that has not had expression. So say you experience, you're experiencing something and it brings up sadness. Oftentimes we will not express the sadness. We'll try to justify why we shouldn't feel sad. You'll feel guilty for feeling sad. Even if you start to cry, especially if you don't have a reason for it, you'll wonder, why am I crying? I shouldn't feel this way. You start to make yourself guilty. You start to intellectualize why you shouldn't feel that emotion. And then we'll do everything but actually let ourselves feel that emotion. And so that becomes an unresolved emotion that, it goes deeper into the body. And there's so much research now that shows that's true. So by emotional clearing, I mean that you recognize when that emotion is coming up and you give yourself a safe space to express that emotion without harming yourself or others. So for example, if sadness is coming up, I would just give myself privacy and space to cry without judging myself for crying, without trying to find a reason for it. The same thing with other emotions like anger. Something will trigger me, and that anger needs expression. It needs a healthy expression without doing damage to other people or even to yourself. And so by emotional clearing, I mean recognizing when any kind of emotion comes up and then giving yourself space or using a technique like tapping. Tapping is a beautiful technique that I've personally used, and it has been transformational for me. But using a tool like that to allow your body to fully express that and not, you come to a point when you do this regularly, you come to a point where you will not be triggered anymore. Not much will trigger you. You will still feel compassion. It gives space for more positive emotions to be held in the body, but that negative emotion is no longer kind of sabotaging you unconsciously. I mean, there's so much. The emotional clearing is a big part of my work as well. This is something that I help people with because when they're going through Pluto Chiron transits, emotions are the first thing that come up to be faced. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is so important to do that, and not many people, they just put their emotions into a box and put it away for another time or don't even look at it. And and I think that is what a lot of people do because they're busy, they haven't got the time to even go into that room and cry or face their anger or whatever it is. But it can be so transformative from what I'm getting. It really can. And especially if it can transform just, your mind, your body, everything. I think that is truly transformative.
Yes. Yeah. The thing is, our sabotaging patterns, the loops that we get stuck into are linked to unresolved emotions.
Yeah.
That's the reason to do it, because you don't want to be like, who wants to be stuck in the same thing over and over again, right? Like you want to have a way to get out of unpleasant loops. So emotional clearing is significant practice of mine.
Yeah.
And
I guess, there's lots of different techniques you can use to do the emotional clearing. And you've touched upon one of them, which is tapping. And obviously, giving yourself space, maybe going into the room and crying if that's what you need to do. Whatever, there's different techniques you can use, and different techniques will work for different people as well. Not every technique works for everyone.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah. So just to kind of end there, I'm a huge advocate for collaboration. So I wanted to ask you what collaboration opportunities you're looking for right now, whether that's personal or to do with the work that you do.
Yeah. Well, thank you for offering that, Shreya. I do have a free gift I offer on my website. It's at activateyourtruthandpower.com/gifts. It's a 45-page ebook that talks about the 12 paths to impeccable personal power. And those 12 paths are related to the 12 signs of the zodiac. And it actually goes into a lot of detail about each zodiac sign. What is a shadow? What is the highest aspect, the highest essence that we're looking for. So if somebody is looking to get more information on what we talked about, that the free ebook, 12 Paths to Impeccable Personal Power, it's a beautiful resource. You can work with it throughout the year. You can work with it throughout your life. It is quite a timeless resource. And specifically for 2024, I've put in key dates of transits that are going to, the important transits of the year that you might want to watch out for, and the themes of those transits. So beautiful resource to anyone who wants to learn more about astrology or deepen their knowledge. And I love to speak. Yeah.
And those are linked to your star signs, right?
Yes. Yeah. So
how do you find out
in your star sign? So you don't have to have a planet in that sign to work with that energy, because we have access to all of it. Like, you may not have anything in the sign of Aries, but you're still being impacted by what's happening in the sign of Aries right now. So that'll give you a pretty good perspective on what's activating that sign, and some journaling questions to work with it.
Yeah. What would be your top tips for women who are kind of trying to find out if they're going through midlife? That's one thing. How do you know if you're going through midlife? What would be your top tips for even knowing that in the first place? And what would be the first thing for them to do if they think that they are?
Yeah. So I think if you're between the ages of 35 to 55, you're likely going through some transit or the other. But some really good clues are you feeling disillusioned in your life? Are you feeling disillusioned with your career? Like, do you feel a lack of aliveness in any aspect of your life? Are you experiencing relationship issues, or experiencing a lot of emotional discomfort? Like, things might be triggering you. Do you feel overwhelmed by a lot of the responsibilities that you have? And you just, you may have been able to, you find that you may have been able to handle it, but it's just getting too much. Like, it just keeps amplifying. All those are good signs that you're probably going through some of those key symptoms that show up during midlife. And one really important thing is, are you looking for more meaning in your life and career? Particularly in your career, if you feel like, I came here to do something, I just don't know what that is. And that's actually a couple of the questions that woke me up. I had these questions running in my mind, like, what have I come here to do? And what if I reach the end of my life and I didn't come here and I didn't do what I came here to do, despite the success that I've had? Because I had experienced success in my career, but it just felt like, why is this not making me happy?
Yeah.
So if you're experiencing that, then definitely something is being awakened in you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then what's the first thing that you would do if you've realized that you
find
are?
out. Yeah. So if you choose, so first of all, the working with that free gift is a beautiful way to start to clear a lot of the gunk that builds up and to get more clarity. But if you want to go further, then I do offer chart readings. The chart readings can give tremendous amount of clarity on what kind of transit you're going through and how to work with it, the places that you sabotage yourself, all of that. And emotional clearing, like if you, and one resource that I work with a lot for tapping is thetapping.solution.com. They have so much information, including videos on how to do tapping, but emotional clearing on a regular basis, I think that's a non-negotiable practice for everyone. I feel like they should be taught in schools. We should be taught how to clear our negative emotions, to honor them and to clear them from very early on so that it doesn't build up over your lifetime. But those are some tools. So the free book, the reading, and emotional clearing, those like the practice of tapping. These are some beautiful ways to work with it.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Thank you. Swati, thank you so much for being on the Empower Her podcast. It's been brilliant to have you on.
Thank you, Shreya. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to Empower Her. I hope today's episode has left you feeling inspired and motivated to make a positive difference in your world. Please follow the podcast and share it with anyone who will find it helpful. Until next time, keep striving for positive change and greatness for all women.